Watchmen was written by Alan Moore and illustrated by Dave Gibbons. The concept originally were to use charlatan comic book characters in the real world, but later the team, or upper management, decided it was better that Alan created his own characters. But he still used charlatan comic book characters as inspiration. So for Captain Atom, he was inspired to create Manhattan, Blue Beetle to Night Owl, Thunderbolt to Ozymandias, The Question, and Mr. A, Rorschach, Nightshade, Silk Spectre, and of course the Peacemaker to Comedian. Watchmen is praised as a popular comic book for its narrative, its use of reoccurring symbols, and exploration of heavier themes, among other things. You would think that DC would respect Alan, because he did so much for the comic book genre, huh? Anyways, DC originally was going to hand over the rights of Watchmen to Alan and Dave after the run, but due to the explosive popularity of the series and DC loving money, they decided to keep it.
'Cause I possess it, I'm stingy, and it's mine.
So, you probably know that DC created their own prequels to Watchmen to make up hype for the Watchmen movie, but Watchmen isn't the only Watchmen content that was Alan approved, Alan sanctioned. There are Watchmen prequels in existence that are technically canon to that universe. It's just not really comic books. Look, I wanted to look into these books, not just for role-playing, but to find if there's any connection to Doomsday Clock. I wanted to see if Jeff looked to this as inspiration. Maybe we're gonna see characters from here. But currently I'm unable to find these guides, and I feel like that if I were to illegally download it, it would be spitting on Alan, since I'm making a video analyzing Doomsday Clock right now. I mean, like, how much can you do? This is a middle finger enough already, you know? So, for now, we are going to be comparing just Watchmen to Doomsday, and pulling a bit from before Watchmen among other comics. But the main two books that you should have read, because I'll explain the other comics that we might look to, is Watchmen and the issue of Doomsday Clock I'm making the video on. There probably are more, or it's all out if you're reading this, I don't know, watching this 20 years in the future. But I'm choosing to be behind, I think, 2 issues so that I can group up my thoughts and, get my really weird theories confirmed, because I don't want to look like a dumbass. Anyways, so you should probably have fully read Watchmen, because I'm going to spoil it out of the ass. And you should probably read the issue of Doomsday Clock that I am covering, that this video, the video's number says. Do not, well, you can read the other numbers, but it's gotta be this one. Can't skip this one and look to me and be like, why are you telling me this stuff? I didn't know this stuff. Well, I'm sorry. But I said, okay? Okay. I love you. Anyways, you can argue that Watchmen ended in a way that feels closed, but Alan still wrote pieces of narratives that probably would have been used as a continuation if DC didn't, well, decide to keep the rights. First and foremost, we have Walter's journal. This is an obvious start. This could unravel everything Adrian worked for. Then there's Dan and Laurie saying they intend to continue being masked crime fighters. Manhattan leaving Earth, even. And Doomsday Clock does pick up on some of these threads. When Doomsday Clock begins, it not only emulates the 3x3 panel style Watchmen is known for, but the first page itself mimics Watchmen in its entirety. Doomsday Clock will tend to mirror pages of the original Watchmen series, only sometimes breaking the trend or mirroring the page later. And I feel like these breaks, like page 3, for example, are symbolizing the chaos of the world of Watchmen, breaking the patterns of the norm, also reminding the viewer that this isn't Watchmen. These breaks can also be taken as a way to highlight how more comic booky this series will be in comparison to Watchmen. The pages feel a lot more like a regular day-to-day comic book than something that is supposed to be taken heavier. It has thicker panels, maybe more dynamic panels. if you know the universe or the storyline of Doomsday Clock, you would know that they cross over into a more comic booky universe. So it might be highlighting that as well. Again, this is just my take on it. You could say that Frank didn't want to make this page paneled 3x3 because he felt it was stupid. And I'd be like, yeah, you probably are more correct than me because I think too deeply on everything. Another thing that happens is that panels will match the previous Watchmen panels. It could be from different angles. It could be talking about the same subject and the characters are posed differently, but it's enough for you to be almost like, hey, that looks like it, but you're looking at it from a different direction. And sometimes I feel like it's important enough to talk about or pause and talk about. And sometimes I feel like it's just doing a callback, making you feel the Watchmen mood. And other times I feel like I might be digging too deep and looking for something that isn't there. So I'll just, quietly put the image next to it if I feel like it's important enough to take note of, but I don't have anything to say really. Back to the first page of Watchmen, because we are going to go over these one by one. God rest your soul. So, visually, the first page aligns near perfectly with the original Watchmen series. A slow zoom out of the street, and what the reader believes is Rorschach monologuing to us. In the original Watchmen, we are introduced to two time frames. One is Eddie Blake's, or the comedian's, death, and the aftermath, the investigation. And the colors are clearly distinguished. You have yellows, blues, reds, and green with touches of purple. The red-purple scenes being dynamically contrasted to this calm mess. I mean, it is messy, but it's calm. The investigators are idly walking around the apartment. The scenes on the street is relatively calm. And with Doomsday Clock, you might be thinking that, wow, they didn't even pay homage to Gibbons and his choices of color, but the colors are actually still there, but blurred. Not everything is black and white anymore. Heroes are evil. Everything is blending together. Although Doomsday Clock is following the same paneling as Watchmen, it does feel faster paced. Watchmen gave you a feel of danger encroaching. Walter's sign basically straight up telling you, end is nigh. Even looking at what happened with the investigators, they are looking at something that has happened. It's past tense. The danger was there. There was danger. We're not dealing with it, and it's not a problem to us. And this is a core part of Watchmen, how it was able to slowly build. Average day-to-day things can and be happening the moment disaster strikes. Eddie was just watching TV when he was assassinated. Manhattan was getting a watch when he was struck. People were breaking up a fight when Adrian's creation appeared. Doomsday Clock disrupts that. We are at the moment of disaster, and we know it. We recognize it. Everything is going haywire. Everything is in the now. We do not get two different time frames. It is all current. In the panels, we see a man carrying a sign similar to Rorschach's. Little bit on the nose, Jeff. But you do you. As he leads the uproar against an empty Veep tower. In Watchmen's issue number 4, Watchmaker, Manhattan deals with a similar riot with little to no effort. We see how badly the world is affected by his disappearance. Continuing with Doomsday Clock, we find our sign-carrying man break through, only to get killed. But it's too late for any force to stop the crowd. They have an entrance and they are getting in. Now, just like the original Rorschach, who was cut down before he can see what happened when his journal hit the public, the nameless man lay floating in the pond, and he is unable to see what the crowd does. Interestingly, he floats in the pond where previously an assassin, Veep, tired to be a red herring in Rorschach's investigation, had died. This can mean many things. I, for one, see it as, unlike Rorschach, his death, this was for nothing. The building is empty of everyone, especially Adrian. The police are protecting just an object, and the police probably don't want to protect it at all. There is a fight for nothing. Anyways, the question I have about this scene, and it's, why is there a newspaper on the desk? This place is desolate, so who delivered the newspaper, and more importantly, was Adrian here recently? Emulating the comedian's death, Adrian's desk chair is thrown out of the building. Technically, this is Veep's death. This is the death of a public persona he created to rise to the top. This is the death of any trust in him. As this is occurring, we see Rorschach's successor monologuing to us. As I said before, we believed it was. The comic wanted us to believe it was. Or at least be wondering, who is this dude? Is it Walter? It kinda is Walter, but the comic, or Jeff and Frank, wrote in indicators to show us, or at least tell us, that no honey, this is not Walter. And we're supposed to believe it's also Rorschach's journal. I mean, of course, it's gotta be Rorschach's journal. The bubbles, they look like pages torn out, which is a lot like the style of Watchmen. But there are big hints that this is not Rorschach's journal, and this is not the Rorschach we know, and in fact, this is this dude's thoughts. First and foremost is, of course, his memory issues. If you've read Watchmen 100 times like me, you know that Rorschach not only has a great memory, but can pull it out in a snap. This also works as establishing that Rorschach 2 may be an unreliable narrator in this story. There's also the missing journaled page numbers, which shows us that this is not a journal. And this is a kinda indicator, because if Before Watchmen is canon, then might not be an indicator, is that this Rorschach swears. This Rorschach is a little sweary Mary, and that is not something that happens often in Watchmen. In fact, I think not at all. Then we get the kicker. What Rorschach categorizes as degenerates. Rorschach's degenerate list is
Whores and politicians, all those liberals and intellectuals and smooth talkers.
Basically, he has a reason to hate anyone and everyone. Rorschach's 2 degenerate list starts from totalitarians, moderates, and it basically ends there. He calls the crowd deplorables, but doesn't necessarily single them out. But overall, the writing, it feels very much like Rorschach in tone. The destruction of the American dream, the body horror-like descriptors, and there is the mention of God. Walter actually was a religious man. Of course, again, if you count the Before Watchmen series as canon, he may not be that religious anymore. But how Rorschach 2 speaks of God, it's very weighty, which is something to keep in mind. The next narrators, or people just telling us how this world is going, we are introduced to our newscasters. Rather than detectives who are physically present in Eddie's apartment after his death, we are given someone not physically taking up space in the comic book world. They cannot be interacted with the characters that we have, and even more so by us. They are separated from us on multiple levels. The screens being illustrated in further emphasizes the divide. Like many audiences watching the news, we cannot control or have any cause in what the world powers are doing. We can only listen to what is told. And it ain't fucking good. Now, quick sidebar, it's kind of sad that we are only going to be given newscasters instead of Bernie? God, I'm sorry. I should know their names. I love the Bernies. I love them. Oh my god. I fucked up bad. Anyways, back to it's kind of sad that we are not going to give, the newspaper Bernie stand-in and giving us the public's opinion of the world. Of course, I'm just assuming this, seeing as how TVs and television are heavily indicated throughout this whole story. We get Adrian's television in his little happy Arctic dome. We get cut back to the televisions when none of our characters are even near a television in the end scenes. So I'm fairly certain that our story within a story is going to be set in a television screen. And my hottest guess is that we're going to be, or these little sidebars or side stories are going to be set in a television shop. And that's how we'll get these characters talking amongst each other. But I'm only wondering, what would create cause to visit a television shop near daily, actually? So that's my thoughts. That's my theory, and I shouldn't put my theory out when I'm analyzing something visually. I should analyze what we already have, the facts, the da-da-da. But I got distracted. I'm sorry. Anyways, continuing on. One of the things we are told is the world's masked mystery men are missing. Which is interesting, as we have said before, Lori and Dan said they were going to continue being heroes, which leaves the question, where are they? What happened? Where's the Dan? As a military group closes in on Beat Space, it should be noted that the palette within this panel is dynamically different than the previous panels. We have hues of deep red and only some blue, while this one, it blue all over, blue and white. It's very bleached, it's very stark, and it notes the change in tone. Now, this is where the original series comes to a plateau, where we are given our answers, the whole plot is revealed, and this is where we are given another question. Now, mirroring the 5th page where Rorschach is introduced, we can see what can be assumed to be an operating room with what we can assume to be scans of the first Rorschach. Of course, this can easily be scans of Adrian, but I feel like the facial structure is too Walter to be Adrian. I really wonder, what did the men see that made their eyes buggy? Why are they so freaked out? What is in this operating room? Also, another quick sidebar, I'm sorry, but the television room was wrecked by Manhattan in Watchmen, so did Adrian have it repaired? Or are we in a whole different universe? It's just a theory, a game? No. Anyway, so I'm just noting this, because this could totally be an error, but, you know, the whole television room where the military men are should be wrecked. Continuing on, we are next introduced to a jail. Now, you can say this is the same jail Rorschach broke out of, and sure, I believe you, it's up to debate. The pages again are emulating the initial comic. The chapter, however, is not a song lyric to Bob Dylan, but the ending line of the poem Ozymandias. If you're comparing the two Freudian heroes, Rorschach 1's costume is dirty, ripped up, it's aged. Rorschach's 2 costume, on the other hand, is brand spanking new. Also, the facial expressions made within the masks are so different. I wanted to chalk it up to stylization, but at this point, I feel like the movement within Rorschach's 2 mask is generated differently. The original Rorschach's expression couldn't be equated to human features, but followed the heat of the body, which is a terrible dress design because there's only one area, the groin. It generates the most heat, so there would be a splotch over the groin all the time. That's a bad idea. I understand why Kitty turned it in and said that's an ugly idea. Whatever. Anyways, it would follow the heat within the face, which it makes a slower movement. When you get angry, sure, there's a rush, but to trace that, it doesn't highlight your eyes. And yes, there are times when, Rorschach's expressions, or the first Rorschach's expressions, breaks that type of pattern, but it was for stylistic choices and to make, Rorschach's emotions more apparent. The new mask doesn't seem to follow that logic at all. I think the blots follow movement when you are moving your mouth. So when he squints his eyes, it outlines it. I don't know. Anyways, as the story progresses, we are once more hinted at the fact that this is a narration of Rorschach's second train of thought, rather than a journal entry. He comments on presently being hungry, and regales about his morning. And another clue that this is not our Walter is his descriptor of women. None of the 2 descriptions he uses are rude. None of them are mean. He doesn't call them a whore, so not very Walter-like. It's interesting how Rorschach's second story about the morning seems tame in comparison to the riot that we were just seeing. Are those really sharing the same morning? Anyways, in his story, we see how his train of thought works. In comparison to Rorschach's the first train of thought, which if he were to see an item, he would comment on maybe its historical meaning or infer how that item got placed. He makes connections and investigates the surroundings as its own thing. While Rorschach's the second, his surroundings as well as his thought, what he's trying to remember, bleeds into each other. He looks at the door and remarks what time they stopped serving breakfast at. 11. He continues with what time he got packed. 1/4 past, which is 11:15. The minute hand would be on the 3. We are looking at 13. Rorschach II establishes that the woman we are about to meet is extremely dangerous. He previously offered a super buff prisoner the keys, wanting to fight. This Rorschach the Second, is really tough. We know this. We were just told this. And he's saying this woman is dangerous. I'm trusting him on this. I'm scared. I'm spooked. This woman must be dangerous. Then the following pages, we get hands reaching for detonators and bombs as Rorschach opens the door. We are getting a visual confirmation that releasing this woman is like pressing a detonation button. So, who is she? Paralleling the original comic with the last panel on page 7, and on the first 2 on page 8, we are introduced to the silhouette of Erica Manson. And you probably already know this, but she's inspired from Punch and Julie, which are my 2 favorite characters. I'll talk about it later. But, oh my god, I love Punch and Julie. They were charlatan comic book characters, so they are following the same vein that the Watchmen characters came from. Continuing with our story, she isn't scary visually. In fact, she's frightened of Rorschach the Second. And she even comments that the last time Rorschach saw her, he would throw her down an elevator shaft. And I guess he just really likes doing that. Erica talk about his identity and how he isn't Rorschach. Their dialogue continues as she is handed a photograph. In the original Watchmen, the first photograph we are handed, well, the first important photograph, there is Eddie shaking hands with the president, but that's not important. What is important is the photograph of the Minutemen, and this mirrors that scene. It also mirrors the scene of Manhattan looking down at the Polaroid. There is weight in this photograph. Anyways, when Erica is handed the photograph, we should know Rorschach's bare hands are nice and clean, while Erica's hands, especially the nails, are chipped and growing out, maybe even yellowed. The lighting might be making it look that way. Another fact is that, we're getting back to the Punch and Julie bit, so as I said before, Erica and Marco are based off the charlatan characters Punch and Julie. You may know, I know, because I've read everything I could about Punch and Julie. I'm sorry, I love them so much. They are such good characters. I would die for them. They had to stay at Belle Reve and served in the Suicide Squad. Many people believe this is why Harley was implemented as a member of the Suicide Squad, because previously they had these favorite clown characters and it lightened up the mood. I say please bring back Punch and Julie and Suicide Squad. What was I talking about? Fuck. Oh, they had to stay at Belle Reve and served in the Suicide Squad, where Julie at the time got pregnant. And I think it's very safe to assume that, unlike Julie, Erica wasn't allowed to leave the prison during her pregnancy and during the birth. In fact, she was separated from her child right after the birth and not told where that child would go, which probably hurts a lot. She's separated from her husband. She's separated from her baby. I feel so bad for Erica. Anyways, Erica's reaction to Rorschach is extreme and it's unhesitant. She pounces the dude. Rorschach remains calm during this exchange. After berating him on the whereabouts of her son, she takes up the offer to find God on the condition that her husband must come along too. Rorschach first says no, but gives in when seeing how important her family is. Again, this establishes a divide with the initial Rorschach. Where Walter may be a pushover for children, I doubt he would feel similar to morally corrupt parents. The following scene, we get a prison riot, and we are introduced to the straight-faced Marco Mayes. The page itself parallels the moment Rorschach and Dan enter the underground lair, where in the first comic this scene is quiet and their surroundings are untouched by time. This one is energetic. We also see that Marco has kept himself nice and tidy, so I guess Erica's just like that then. As the story unfolds, Marco remains calm as he is dragged out of his cell and viciously beaten down. He no longer has a deadpan expression as pain is painted across his face, each frame encapsulating Marco's brutal beating, as well as mirroring the comedian's death. Erica interrupts this, telling him that he needs to hurry up his act. Rorschach and the rest of the readers are perturbed by calling what's happening a performance, but resigns with his vocal quirk. This conversation can be compared to Laurie's and Dan's conversation as Walter finishes up his business. Marco listens to Erica's request and finishes up his act by brutally disfiguring and maiming the group that was attacking him. He grins widely at the audience, the smile of course being similar to our favorite little button. Moving on, the reunion between Marco and Erica is cut short as Rorschach emphasizes the importance of leaving before time runs out. Erica no longer exhibits any apprehension when dealing with Rorschach. She touches his shoulder and hat, All of Rorschach's threats are cut off and ignored. Just let him speak, please, Erica. And Marco remains deadpan until he realizes he's missing his weapons. Erica understands immediately. We get to see how this couple works. The following pages, I think it's pretty clear-cut what's going on. It does add commentary to Marco's character, but I will explore it if I can in videos that go through each of the characters that we are introduced and play a role in Doomsday Clock. So I'm gonna brush past this one, but it's easy to note that Marco only conveys emotion necessary to his quote-unquote audience. The next scene establishes their passage. It's notable that Walter never drove, and I'm fairly certain only ate at the Gunga Diner. Erica's hair is noticeably in a better condition as well. I'm just pointing this out because it looks really wild earlier and then calmer now. Did you, I don't know, brush it while they're walking? Anyways, we see their car drive into the city as masses are exiting. The trio enter the sewer as Erica persists with questions. Rorschach, losing his train of thought again, forgets the way back to Dan's secret. Anyways. Erica looks over to her husband and we get to see the dynamic of the couple. He is the muscle. He points the gun at Rorschach and she makes the demands. But maybe this is my personal opinion, but I feel like the dynamic isn't unbalanced. There is a sense of equality. The way she looks at her husband, it feels like she's, looking to him for opinions. She's looking for him to see his move. They are moving in tandem together. There is a sense of equality, and I just love it so much. I love Mime and Marionette. I love Punch and Julie. Oh my god. Oh my god. Did you guys see that page? That page, oh my god. Mime, why are you so handsome? Why is Mime so perfect? Okay, I'm done. They have an obvious distrust of their therapy session of a detective, and Rorschach is too focused on remembering the way to even pay attention to what they're going on about. When Erica says all right, it helps him remember. Again, this relates back to what I said on Rorschach's train of thought. Marco takes the time to reholster his gun. I'm just saying that because I really enjoy the commitment and effort put into his character and how he moves and how he works. In page 20, we are supposed to be introduced to Dr. Manhattan in the original Watchmen, but instead, we are back at Dan's lair. This could just be because of pacing, but again, I want to say that this is the comic emphasizing the emptiness, the world reacting to not having Manhattan anymore. As the couple and Rorschach explore the place, Erica gets excited at the prospect of working with Dan, which is adorable. Also, Marco doesn't seem to listen to anyone but his wife. He picks up a screwdriver and pretends to put the item back down when Rorschach orders him to, only to pick it back up moments later when his back is turned. The next page actually mirrors the entrance to John, except being slightly shorter. Ozymandias is larger than life, but isn't a god. Erica immediately becomes confrontational for obvious reasons. Marco wordlessly tosses her a screwdriver and she instantly catches it. Again, this illustrates how effortlessly the two work in tandem. Erica continues threatening Rorschach. Marco steps in position ready to take the man down. Ozymandias further points out that they only need Erica, yada yada. Let's skip to Adrian talking about the differences between the two Rorschachs. I feel like it's very important to look at Rorschach's reaction to Adrian pointing out how much he isn't Rorschach. The weight of this identity of Rorschach to new Rorschach, or however you want to call it, even in comparison to Walter and his time being Rorschach, and his time being alive rather than dead. How it, that is him. Walter is a persona. Walter is a disguise to meld in with the masses. But Rorschach is now him, and he's not anyone else. Rorschach, too, seems to take up that mantle, too, but differently. It feels like the concept of Rorschach, the idea of being Rorschach, is him. And he isn't Rorschach, too, because Rorschach is always Rorschach no matter who takes up the mantle. And that reminds me of the identity of a different character. If I get the time, I would love to make a video talking and exploring what I think is going on with Rorschach, but I am a poor college student, and maybe someone else will do it. Who knows? Hopefully I will, because I love talking to myself in a room while my cat looks at me. Anyways, Adrian and Bubastis are uncomfortable or even fear Rorschach, and from now on, I'm going to call baby Bubastis New Bastis because she's brand new. So we get Adrian building up to finding John, and we're reminded of what's going on in the world right now. We get a television set talking to us about what's going on. No one has a television on right now. Adrian reveals he has cancer. We're not told where exactly it is, but seeing as Watchmen has a popular motif and where Adrian touches his head as the migraine occurs, we can have an accurate guess where his tumor is. But that is an assumption based off what Adrian said right after we're given this. Then we are brought to the DC universe, where Clark is asleep with Lois. Walden too is on Clark's side of the nightstand. This is from looking at a Wikipedia page, so I'm probably gonna get this ass wrong, and I don't want to read Walden and Walden 2 because I am a lazy motherfucker. Walden 2 is a sequel to Henry David Thoreau's Walden, but this Walden, this sequel to Walden, is written by someone else. You see, Jeff really has a thing with subtlety, doesn't he? Okay, whatever. Walden is about self-actualization through solitude, retelling a man's time in solitude and his understanding of self. Walden 2 is a reversal, living in a community and finding happiness there, and finding yourself. The comparison of Superman and Manhattan with these Walden books is kinda obvious. Clark dreams of his prom and his parents' death. He's miserable and wallflowering. His parents die in a car crash while speaking about God's intentions. Clark wakes from the nightmare, and in Watchmen we have a character who similarly has a nightmare and wakes with a start. You see Clark's in Lois's room a lot better. Her side is messy, his neat. Clark is perfect. She's more human. He infers that he's never had a nightmare before, and the story ends. The extra pages we are given are mostly newspaper clippings within a folder, talking about the state of the world, and so on. Byron Lewis, the Mothman, a former member of the Minutemen, is in the obituaries, his heroism not being mentioned. I've read theories and the article talking about how, Jeff killed off a Watchmen character right before our eyes and it was hidden. Usually they infer the idea that Watchmen and the Minutemen were forgotten to the public. But I think very differently, because we didn't forget who's the Minutemen or who came out as the Minutemen. It's because heroes are bad now. We hate heroes in this world. Adrian V, Ozymandias, the greatest man, the greatest hero we know of, we hear of, has betrayed us. He did this to us. Heroism is a bad thing. Mentioning Byron Lewis as the Mothman would be like saying, dude was shitty in the obituaries. We didn't forget, we're just not adding it to paint him in a better light. There's also the mention of Veet trying to kill off or stop the journal from reaching the public, and that's it. That's the story. I have a lot of thoughts on this issue. I think there is a lot of hard hits. It really has a faster pace than regular Watchmen, and I think that's because we are not starting from the beginning in a way. We are starting from the middle where chaos ensues, and I think it's going to slow down by I think the third issue. I have a couple theories. I'm going to just say them real quick. Not really spoilerly, but here's the theories. One, if you paid attention, I said the public and the world is depicted will not be at a newsstand, but rather a TV shop or something involving televisions. And that's also how we're going to get our story within the story. And I have a hot guess that it's going to be a Noir story. In issue number 5, which should mirror Fearful Symmetry, I feel like it's going to reference V for Vendetta. Or issue number 6, which, in Watchmen, 6 explores Rorschach's character, or Walter's. I feel like Adrian is going to be thrown out of a window. I just feel like that's going to happen. Just like how Comedian is thrown out of the window. This next theory is kind of outlandish, but I feel like the Comedian is one of the 3 Jokers. Now, hear me out. One of the reasons I say this is because I do not want Mime or Erica or even their baby to be Joker, which a lot of people have been theorizing it, so I'm like, no, all the way over there, be Comedian. But another thing is his namesake and his stance, his belief on the world. I feel like it aligns far better with Joker than Mime, who, even though we don't really know his belief on the world, he seems to distrust a lot of people except for his wife. He doesn't feel chaotic, he just feels performative. Whatever. I'm not gonna re-record because this is just afterthoughts. I feel like Lori and Dan will arrive and it will not be explained, not even in the same issue. It'll just be explained way later. They're just gonna appear. Maybe they will appear in the sense that there's like 2 nightshades or something. But yeah, I think Lori and Dan will arrive, but it won't be explained. Or it'll only be half explained in the issue that they appear in. Another theory I have is one of the 4 characters from the Watchmen universe, most likely Adrian or Rorschach, because Mime and Marionette were already in jail, so I don't think they would go back in jail. Then again, in the first issue of Watchmen, Rorschach makes the staying out of jail comment, so it could be foreshadowing for them. But I really feel like it's going to be Adrian, because he makes the comment of laughing till it hurts, and he's been acting a lot stranger than we know Adrian to be. I feel like Rorschach or Adrian are going to be sent into Arkham Asylum. This will probably happen in issue 5 because Fearful Symmetry, Walter gets arrested then and there. My face, what have you done to my face? You know. So number 5, one of them is going to be sent to Arkham Asylum. I feel like this. I feel it in my bones. My next theory, Star Wars reference. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is because the Batman universe is a lot more modern. It's a lot more with the time. And so it's to serve as a reminder to the reader that this is not the same year, same time as Watchmen. And the universe of Batman is a lot more to ours rather than how Watchmen's universe is, how far deviated it is from our universe. The non-symbolic reasoning I believe this will happen is because it's written and made for nerds. So there we have it. Another theory I have is we're going to have a lot more allusions to things that have multiples of each other, or a sequel that was written by someone else entirely. I think there's going to be a reference to the Bearstein Bears meme, where, one's spelled Stein, one's spelled Steen. I feel like that's gonna be, mentioned, because how the 2 universes deviate from each other. One of my top theories, one of the things I believe in with my heart of hearts, like I saw in a vision this is going to happen, and if it doesn't happen, I'm gonna scream, is that Rorschach is going to pick up a toy. Think in the vein of Funko Pop or Minions, and it's gonna mirror the scene where Rorschach plays with an Adrian V action figure, but it's a fucking minion. I guess it's not a theory, but more something I really want to happen. I also think Lois Lane is going to go missing for some reason. Lois Lane or Superman. But for some reason I feel like Lois Lane's disappearance would be more interesting, because if Superman couldn't find his, is it wife right now? I think they're married in this universe. I don't know. I don't keep track of them. If his wife goes missing and he can't make account for it, there would be a lot of heat on him, and, that might make him go missing, as a consequence, which would mirror, the original Watchmen. Hey, howdy. I'm recording this the next day. My cat keeps jingling and it's super windy. I'm very, very sorry. But I wanted to say that if it's not going to be a television shop, then we're probably gonna have our newsstand stand-in be the Daily Planet. I feel like that isn't a good idea, even though it feels the most obvious, seeing as Walter is so connected to the newsstand in his, Walter persona, and Superman is so connected to the Daily Planet as Clark Kent, but Lois Lane already knows the truth, unlike, the Bernards, and the reason why the newsstand isn't so easily related to the Daily Planet as one might think is because it got from so many different sources, and it wasn't just one source for the news, it wasn't just one opinion. And you'd see Bernie flip-flop through his opinions by whatever he read. And we wouldn't get that if it's just the Daily Planet. We'd get a reporter's opinion instead of the public's opinion of the report, if that makes sense. It might be connected to the Daily Planet in a way if we were just getting a newsstand, but I feel like a television shop or whatever is going to happen would be a better fit than just going with the Daily Planet. I'm sorry, this is rambling because I didn't jot it down. I just wanted to say this real quick because in 3 days, the new issue is going to come out, and I want to get this done before that. because I know the newsstand is going to, or the Bernie Bernard mirror or whatever is going to be revealed in issue 3. So I gotta hurry. Sorry. So that's pretty much it. If you like this video, and I'm not saying like this video, like click that button, but if you liked it but you thought my mic quality was poor and you know headphones that are cheap but have a better mic quality, please tell me. I'd love to get better. I'm a poor college student. I have a Ko-fi set up. I'm looking for a job. You know, if you notice something that I missed, just tell me, or if you have theories of your own, go ahead and tell me. I have a Tumblr set up just for talking about Doomsday Clock and putting my thoughts out on it. I was gonna, you know, just publish it on the Tumblr, but I knew that it was unsearchable and I didn't want to publish it on some news site because, one, I like getting attention and I like talking. And 2, I feel like it needed to be shown visually along with the text, and it's hard. You know, you get the text and walls of text pointing out and indicating these things, and then the picture's like below it, and you have to go back up and down and look at the picture and look at the text, look at the picture. So I thought, you know, talking through it, even if my mic quality was shoddy, it would be better. So yeah, you can comment here, comment to me on my Tumblr, whatever. Thanks for watching this video. I'm really thankful because, God, this is so long and I'm super annoying and I love you. Thank you for sitting through this. Bye. Hopefully I'll talk about issue 2. And I think I'll continue to issue 5. And then during the hiatus, I'll analyze the characters and do things I missed video. I don't know. Maybe this will be the only video because, again, I'm a poor college student and